architectural review to order. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy and a healthy new year. Welcome to the first meeting. We have one application to review this evening to discuss for Sunnymead, which is a landscaping plan. I want to welcome back, are they on? I don't know. The applicants. Well, the representative is on, I expect. Hello, Mr. Boyce.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome them back. And this application is of importance to many, as you can tell by the number of people we have who would like to comment in this meeting. And, oh, I see Mrs. McLennan, welcome back. I see you. To discuss the importance to many because of the trees involved and the proximity to our reservoir, of which we are all stewards. And just as a background, I would reference the code section 65.1C, which provides that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Tuxedo Park determines that the provision be made for the regulation and supervision of activities that would damage or otherwise adversely affect the waters of the Tuxedo Lake Pond number 3 and Weewa Lake. I'm not making that conclusion. I'm just saying we look carefully at those things as I'm sure our applicants are concerned about the reservoir as well. With that being said, the application will require a variance because much of the work is within 100 feet of Tuxedo Lake. And that's really all I have preliminarily. And the first order of business will be that we invite the applicants to present their vision and goals for the project. Then we'll be followed or interrupted by bar members who have comments and questions. And then we'll proceed with public comment. And because of the number of people that would like to comment, I'd like you to introduce yourself, your name, your address, maybe any relevant information as to the expertise you bring to this, because I know we have a number of resident experts on trees and the lake today. So with that all being said, I welcome the applicants to take the screen and share with us your proposal.
So my name is William Boyce. I'm a landscape architect representing the applicant. I'm licensed in both New York and New Jersey and have been practicing landscape architecture in and around Tuxedo Park for years. I've made presentations to this board before, so Happy New Year and welcome, and thank you for having me back in front of you. I took the time to kind of collect some photographs, and it may benefit the board and also the residents to see photographs of the site. I was wondering if I would be permitted to share my screen, because as we all know, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I am going to just pull up the right photographs because I have 3 screens here and I just want to make sure that they're presented in the correct order to make it easy.
Take your time. You're the sole applicant and we're here to hear you out.
Thank you. Okay, so I will share my screen, this one here. And is everybody able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I believe this picture is the best overall picture I have that kind of captures most of the components of what we're looking to do. This picture is taken from the top of the hill at the base of the home, and it looks down upon the beautiful reservoir that you all know as part of your home. The property line extends right to the very far left of this image, and about 100 feet from that property line is where this tree is. Beyond that tree, the applicant owns an additional 415 feet of waterfront property, and that area is that extra 415 feet, you know, is mostly wooded, is all wooded. We don't intend to cut any trees down within that area. The boat that you see here in the bottom of the image is what we're looking to reach. Currently, we reach that boat by walking down a steep slope, making a left-hand turn, making a right-hand turn, and then going through this large gate, which is appropriate for vehicles and maintenance down here, and then going down this trail all the way to the boat. Is that clear for everybody? Can everybody see my screen and that makes sense?
I'm clear.
Okay, very good. So I'll go to my next photograph now. This is what the slope looks like as it goes down, from the house is the beginning part of the slope. And then there's a line of rocks, and then there's a disturbed area covered in gravel and loose rocks here. Obviously, you can see the reservoir in the background and a big rock outcropping on the right. This is a closer view of that gravel trail that goes down to the boat. At some points, this trail is directly on the reservoir, with a thin margin of native and non-native plants that border between the trail and the reservoir. It's got riprap on both sides, which are really just rocks from the site, probably, and maybe somewhere imported. I'm not really sure, but it's adjacent to it. There's pretty decent vegetation. It's got some moss. These are mountain laurel, as you could probably tell. This is carex. Those are native. All of these are natives. There are some non-natives also, not very many. Here's an example. This is pokeweed. But this is what the trail looks like when it finally connects to the boat. The applicant's goal was to create a more picturesque means of egress to the boat. Also, while working with that, we found another means of egress which actually comes from the boat and goes this way and up the hill with steps like these to around this tree and up in front of this rock outcropping, which would remain obviously intact. It's gigantic, beautiful. The goal is to put a bench in front of here and overlook the lake. All of these trees in view here would not be touched. At this location, we would need a gate in the deer fence. I have a picture of what the gate might look like in a moment. And once you depart that area where that rock outcropping is, the goal is to then come up to a patio, which is here, and I'll show you where that is on the plan in a moment. And then from the patio, you would connect to the gravel trail that goes up the hill. So actually some numbers here. I know everybody likes numbers, as do I. We're looking to remove 14 trees. As per John, I went to the site and I carefully measured all the trees, the locations, and there are in fact 14 we're looking to have removed to open up the view of the reservoir again. Those trees it's a very fragmented forest. They're averaging 15 or so feet apart. They're in various condition. Most of them are pretty good. Some the tops are off of, and others the tops are dead. Well, one in particular, the hemlock. But as you probably know, fragmented forests aren't as healthy as a contiguous forest where all the trees kind of lean on each other and buffer each other. So the goal is to remove 14 trees rather than 4 a year, just take them out. The goal is to then put in 21 new trees, which would be smaller, flowering understory trees, and they would, hover up above the grade and not reach more than 15 or 20 feet at maturity. This would maintain a nice view of the reservoir, would also provide more shading of the ground plane for smaller plants to thrive and have more biodiversity. We're also looking to plant 124 shrubs within the area of the path that would be removed. We're looking to add 146 ferns, native grasses, and perennials, and upwards of, I have 500 Carex pennsylvanica, which is Pennsylvania sedge, which I saw on site. Our goal is not to disturb any of the existing vegetation, which is flanking that trail that we're looking to remove. Our goal is to, really keep that as intact as possible. The aggregate that comprises the pathway down the slope would be repurposed to create the new path going up the other side. No trees are cut to create that new path going up the other side. Existing boulders would be used to flank the path going up the other side, and granite steps would be brought in to provide steps up. This would all be done with a small machine. During the work, we would protect the reservoir with a silt fence or even a double silt fence if that's important. Obviously, it is important. While plants are being established, that silt fence would stay in place. I think currently the pathway down this slope is an erosive material and can actually go into the reservoir, whereas when we're finished, we will have removed 1,524 square feet of erosive gravel and replaced it with less, 1,139 square feet. But since we're adding steps, it won't be on a slope and less likely to erode. That's one important thing, take home. The proposed patio is about 900 square feet that would happen in this area. And when we're done, we will have, I believe, a better buffer to the reservoir than what we currently have, which are, 14 trees, a loose graded aggregate, which is erosive and in motion, as you can see by a few of my pictures. Let me see if I can click on this one directly, and then I'll pop up. This one you can see there's a little rivulet rill here that kind of pours down into that lawn area, but makes its way. So I would like to show you the plan now. Thank you for looking at all of my pictures. Actually, here's one more picture. So you see this moss, we would keep all of that intact. That would be undisturbed. We might dig out a little hole and put some more native ferns in there, of which there are 100 proposed.
Picture, William.
I'm sorry?
You're still on the earlier picture. I don't see moss.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the first picture?
I'm on a picture showing the lake with a lot of sort of single standing oaks.
Is that the only picture you saw?
No, I saw it earlier.
Okay, okay. I was worried. Thank you. Okay.
I'm not looking at the moss right now.
Okay, let's see if I can get the moss to appear. Yeah, it's funny. When I dragged the moss picture from my other monitor, it didn't show up. There's moss. Does that look right? Okay. Yeah, so that would be the moss that we would keep intact. It's a perfectly good ground cover. I see no reason to cover it in mulch. We just leave that, plant ferns within it in little pockets or voids. Perhaps this would be a good one. And that's that. So I'll turn to my plan view now. I'm going to keep this in AutoCAD so I can look at measurements if you like. This is the same plan I presented to you. It's just not in a PDF format. When I presented the plan to John, he asked that I add the 100-foot setback from the reservoir, which is right here indicated in this magenta color.
We still just see the moss.
Oh, okay. Let me figure out how to not have you see the moss. Thank you for clarifying. I apologize for my technical ineptitude. Here's more moss. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and then I'm going to bring my drawing into my other monitor, and then I'll share, and maybe that'll do the trick. Share. Other monitor, screen 1. Share. Do we see a plan now?
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for your patience. To give you a sense of scale, here's the dwelling. Here's that long sloping trail that gets us down to the gravel area with the rocks that's sort of erosive. This is where that rill was that I showed you. This white path here, this is what we're looking to remove. And then the egress to the boat would be replaced by this level pathway, these steps with boulders from the site, another little pathway in front of that giant rock outcropping, a few more steps up to the patio area, a level area, steps, and then that would, have a reduced grade from here up to the path that would then lead to the house. So with that, this indicates that current deer fence, which would stay in place. Um, and then this location over here is where we would add the one pedestrian gate just to walk through and access. Sorry, I have to use two hands on this. These are the steps that would go down the slope to the dock. Let's see. All the plants I'm proposing are native to the area. A lot of them will have flowers. There's cardinal flower. There's Joe Pye weed. They do wonderfully in wet areas. There's bayberry. This is off the top of my head. There's uh, American holly, which do really well. Everything is selected so it would be as deer resistant as possible. Deer tend not to like ferns, although nothing is ever, you know, if they're hungry enough, they'll eat almost anything, but oftentimes they don't. And I would like to stress that when we're doing this, we'll use small machines as possible. We will provide silt fence or a double silt fence row, and you know, perhaps we can offer a maintenance guarantee to, you know, check up on this work to make sure it's taking hold, and you know, any plants that don't thrive, we can replace, you know, not after a year, but kind of concurrently with when we observe that they're not doing well, to give it the best chance of survival. You can see here, like, we're placing plants right over where the trail is, and then we would be plugging in opportunistically, you know, more of the native grasses and ground covers and perennials, you know, as we see voids in the ground plane, you know, wherever there isn't something already thriving, we'll use that as an opportunity to plant. That is pretty much all I would have to say, and I'd open it up to the chairman for questions.
Okay. I'd like to call on Christopher Gow. Christopher, are you on? Yeah.
So thank you, William. I'm glad you're involved with this project because it's a beautiful site, and we've been impressed with your work before, and your choice of natives is great. So
Christopher, I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself and you know, your association with the...
So obviously on the Board of Architectural Review, also I'm the chairman of the Tree Advisory Board of Tuxedo Park.
Thank you.
And have a degree in botany. So we all want to enjoy and view this lake and benefit as well from it as our reservoir. So it has this double whammy that is quite rare. You probably know in New Jersey, reservoirs are strictly for reservoirs, and they have a chain link fence around them, and we can't benefit from it recreationally. So it's like a work of art. It's precious and beautiful. And in the same way that you would protect like a Picasso canvas with a frame, our lake, our reservoir needs protecting as well, with its frame being a wide riparian, as we call it, or vegetative buffer zone of native plants, bushes and trees all around it as much as possible. I mean, this analogy is not such a good one because a painting canvas is inert, whereas the composition of the lake is very much alive and subject to climatic variations and the actions of human beings. And the majority of people have a limited understanding of the delicate balance of the environment and the ecology. And I think we're understanding a little bit more of late because a little bit like a canary in a coal mine, if you understand that since the 1970s, the bird population, for example, has decreased 30% from then till now. So that's a very dire warning. It may be that, well, 30% isn't much, but if you imagine that's your bank account and that, you know, your bank account is decreasing all the time, it's an alarm. So we have a responsibility to be good, us and everyone, but especially us in the village of Tuxedo Park, to be good stewards of our environment. And lakeside property owners have an opportunity to make a significant difference, both good and bad, often unwittingly, often not knowing. So here with this project, the thing that sticks out the most is the trees. Trees play an outsized role alongside rivers and lakes, especially oaks. They have an enormous root system, sometimes extending 3 times the edge of the canopy, making them champions, far head and shoulders above others when it comes to soil stabilization, carbon sequestration, and watershed management. Oaks also support more forms of life than any other tree genus in North America. Planting an oak tree is arguably the most significant and beneficial ecological environmental thing one can do in one's own backyard, which is why at the end of last year, every Tuxedo Park resident was sent a mailing encouraging this. So we're very much for planting oak trees. Thus, cutting down an oak tree, especially at the lake edge, will have such a negative impact. It should only be taken if absolutely necessary. Even in that rare case, it should be an oak tree that's cut down should be replaced with multiple oak saplings planted in other areas beforehand, ideally, so that there is an overall net gain, not a loss of significant oak tree benefits. The replacement plants that you mentioned, I would argue that one oak tree with its root system and the benefits is probably equates to practically everything that you're putting in. I can't state it enough how important oak trees are. I understand, it'd be nice to have an improved lake view, cutting down oak trees, but it is a huge environmental cost. And so it really is something that very, very much against. A partial view of the lake is sometimes even better than a clear-cut view. So that is the main problem that I have with this proposal. What I would love to see, what would be the great thing to see here, and the responsibility of lake owners would be to improve on this important vegetative buffer, this important riparian barrier, so that extending to the north of this diagram, so as right along the property line, to plant as many native plants, bushes and trees as possible. Perhaps, in the areas where you don't have the view from the house or from the proposed patio, and to have it as wide as possible. That would be such a huge, significant benefit to everybody concerned for the health of our lake, which we want to protect. But God forbid the DEC come and decide that, well, let me back up. The importance of this riparian buffer is to act as a filter, to stop excess nutrients going into the water, to protect it, to keep it stable so it can look after itself, so we don't have to dump chemicals into it to try and undo the damage we did. Mother Nature is the best mother and scientist. She knows what she's doing. The more we interfere, the more we have to undo. So if we can get it protected so it's in its natural state as much as possible, it's a win-win situation for everybody. So that's let me turn it over to my colleagues, but that's the main points that I wanted to make, that removing the oak trees is a significant problem.
Any of the other bar members have any questions or comments before we turn to the public?
I do have a couple questions. And as Christopher said, and this is Rob McQuilkin, I'm a member of the bar. It's actually quite a masterful plan, William and Melanie, in terms of what you're trying to take away and what you're putting in its place. It strikes me as in many respects a vast improvement, and getting rid of that friable sort of path to something more stable in particular is very attractive. But I also share a lot of the concerns that Christopher just outlined with regard to oaks and stabilization of the soil and erosion, and also just populations dependent on the flora. So can I just ask a question, William? If you were to go back to, there's a view that the one we were stuck on just before the moss.
Sure. Yep. I'm going to stop sharing and then share momentarily. Oh. Is that the same
Good.
one? I have one with a boat in it, and I have another that doesn't. The one that this is more beneficial because this takes us all the way to the corner.
Right, right. So this to the right of these, what look like white pines, or I'm not sure what they are.
Oh, right here. Yep.
Yeah. So to
They're
the
white
right,
pines.
okay. And to the right of that is where there would be a large terrace, right?
Right in this area here. Yes.
Um, and which of the oaks just here, to the best of your, knowledge, are you talking about cutting that we can see?
So the only trees to be, which we were proposing to be removed, extend from here along this edge to the property line to provide the view of the water, an uninterrupted view of the water. Everything from this one in this direction, these would all stay in our application.
So that little
Um,
grove to the right is meant to stay, as well as
yes.
larger woods to the beyond that. And
Yeah.
then if you go all the way over here, there's a one very pretty white oak or something. It's very dark. Uh, it's actually to the left of that. So the one you're touching right now with all of the suckers, that's the
Yeah.
last one to go, or the first one staying?
That's like the last significant one to go. In our application, these are less significant. This one has no top. It's hard to decipher from this photograph, but there's a hemlock here. I think it may actually be in line with the one behind it, and it is missing its top. And then, so no top hemlock. You could see the condition of this one. But the goal is to take these out. I mean, maybe,
Would go
and I'm,
over. So then it was, as I was thinking, it's the first one that you're imagining keeping would be this very beautiful large caliper one to the left of where you are. No, you're talking. You're talking about.
this is not ours. This is our neighbor's
Okay,
oak.
right.
And then this one, that one is, I believe, on the neighbor's property as well. It's
Okay,
really from here this way that would be,
right.
again, in this application removed.
Mhm, mhm. And then how far do you have another picture that shows the wooded area to the north?
I can rifle through my photos quickly.
Well, I don't want to waylay you, but I thought if it was easy.
I have one. Oh, I wish I have some. Let me stop sharing momentarily, and I can bring this in. Share again, and yes, that's the one. And do that. Can you see that? There's an
Mhm.
orange tape measure here.
Yes.
So this is a pretty good representation of what happens, beyond the rock outcrop all the way around. It's, unadulterated tree party here. There's hemlock.
Does that go on for another 150 feet or 100 feet or something?
Actually more. It goes on for 415 feet
Wow.
from the last tree that we're proposing to cut, which is somewhere behind me if we're looking in this direction.
And is that
So
that's pretty dense woods then?
yeah, it is very dense. and there's no plans to develop that at all. And the home really doesn't impact that. It's really kind of a, let me see if I can zoom out on my survey to give you a sense of the scale of that. This may take a second. I apologize, but there's a lot of information to communicate here. This is pretty good. This is actually beyond the presentation that I had given to John. Can you see my screen now with a plan on it, or is it still a photograph?
Absolutely.
It's a plan. Okay, good. So this is the furthest limit of the home. This is the setback line. These are all trees.
Mhm.
This is the approximate and varying water's edge. So this is, these are the steps. And to give you the full context, steps are here. This would all remain wooded. And then we would look to remove the path here, and then, change the ground plane here to add, that, roughly 150 trees, shrubs, and ferns. No, not 150. I'm sorry. It's more than that. So 21 trees, 124 shrubs, 146 ferns and native grasses and perennials, and then 500 carex. Although understanding now a little bit more of, the significant responsibility the board and the residents feel towards protecting this great asset here, we could embellish that with more plants with the applicant's permission. I would also like to point out that by removing this pathway, I did, want to create a buffer of vegetation along this open lawn space. And as we all know, people like to put fertilizer on the lawn, so we'd be increasing the buffer along the whole edge. So this would all be vegetated buffer rather than that sloped moss, which I can't imagine absorbs all that much, and the pathway. So
That's attractive. So when you go down to the edge of the lake, right now where the white path is,
yeah,
I mean, one of the things that Christopher mentioned, but I didn't hear in your laundry list, was the question of a riparian border as such. I mean, are there opportunities there to enhance the water purification factor of the edge there where the path was?
yes, there is. So the path, instead of being, gravel, and would then turn to become all of these shrubs. These are Ilex verticillata, which will create a thicket. Birds love them. They have red berries that, are actually still hanging on their plants right now. They're terrific. And then any other we would just be plugging in all the perennials and not ornamental. They're ornamental to me, but the native grasses through this area, and the ferns. And then right along the water's edge, we have the hibiscus, which will be flowering big flowers in the spring, but also it's native, it's beneficial. And then EP, which was what was that? That was the cardinal flower, I think. So there is an additional riparian buffer along the water's edge. I would look to get rid of any of the exotics that are already in there, because they will continue to spread, like the Japanese knotweed that I saw there. It's elsewhere on the site, so we could remove that as well. I really do feel as though the biggest, thing to contend with is the desire to remove the oaks and then create a different, more diverse palette. And I understand the significance of the oaks and Christopher's very wonderful description of the merits of all of that. So of course we're respectful of that and would want to, work with the board to find a solution that's
Well, since you mentioned that, I mean, are there places where you could plant, like if you were to take out some number of oaks, where you could plant, quadruple or quintuple that of young saplings? Are there places where you could imagine doing that?
Yeah.
Not right where you're designing, but I mean on the property as a kind of mitigation or balance.
Yeah, and I'm writing the tree ordinance for my own town, so that's something that we're grappling with as well. And, oftentimes an oak tree, and as Christopher pointed out, the benefit of having the oaks adjacent to the water are great, and the root mass is in particular very strong because it'll hold the soil together. There are other places that we could spot oaks along that remaining 415 linear feet of water's edge and place oaks in voids there to, further assure that that soil will be held together. I could even see, with the applicant's, permission, maybe plant some over in this corner where it won't impede a view or anything, but would actually create more of a grove in this corner, maintain the view. And then you have trees that are not singular and in a line, and a fragmented forest, which is a very weak forest and not necessarily a great forest, still has benefits clearly.
And I will chime in to say that, with heavy winds and heavy weather events, having a line that photograph was the first time I really saw them.
Mhm.
They're not in a grove. They're not growing in a way that's either very natural or very attractive. And they are a danger actually specifically to the lake because they're so standing alone with huge gaps.
Yeah.
And so if one or more of those came down, as many have over the last, since we've been here in 15 years, I've watched things on the other side of the lake come down, massive oaks. It could tear up a huge amount of the lake bank.
Yeah.
I have a
I
question.
think that
Mr. Gow, how
finish
how
the thought.
long would it take for a sapling to give any real protection in terms of its root base to the lake to grow large enough? I mean, to be
Well,
enough.
it's a fascinating
Yeah.
story below the soil of the roots, and that the roots spread out, as I mentioned, much further than we originally thought, and they intertwine and interconnect. So you have this fantastic bonding under the surface, each tree connecting with the other, with the root system, helping extra support for that individual tree. So that line, that necklace of oaks are all interconnected root-wise and help each other. So it is a significant, there's a significant extra support for each one. And as Rob has alluded to, once you remove one, well, then it's like, that support goes. And often when you see in forests, when a tornado or something has knocked down one tree, other trees fall, not at the same time because a tree fell on them, but because they're exposed in a greater extent to the wind than they were before. And so they fail. So once you start messing around with mature trees, they become so much more vulnerable. So that's why, daisy cherry picking and taking one or two out is like, knocking teeth out. It's the support there, the function of them is severely compromised, and the ones that are remaining, their strength is dramatically reduced.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and well put and well taken. I'm not sure, looking at that spindly row, that the gaps haven't already been created. In other words, I'm sure there were quite a few other trees there earlier. I don't know what it looked like, say 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but I feel like a lot of those trees right there are right now quite vulnerable. But
it's certainly, I mean, you see the area above and the area below. Yes, a lot of trees have been removed over the years. So it really is in peril, this area, especially with all the work that's going to be done on it. And so removing the last sort of major support system there by taking down these oak trees is you're playing with fire. It's a very thin line that will be crossed doing that, and cause problems. If when you from the boat, if you look at the forested area, you look at Chastellux, below Chastellux, and then this area, it's night and day. A lot of damage has already been done in years past by previous owners, and so it's crying for mitigation. It's crying for help to reestablish it, to get it into a healthy slope. At the moment, it is not in a healthy situation. It desperately needs attention, and taking down the oaks is just the final nail in the coffin.
I mean, setting aside the oaks for a second, I mean, just to be fair to the application that you discussed and shared with us, William, I mean, 9/10 of what you're talking about is doing exactly what Christopher is talking about. It is restoring what has been a scoured, landscape, and improving it greatly. And so to the extent that we can keep as much that's great about this application as possible while doing as little damage, in that last 10th of it, which is unfortunately, Christopher would use different metrics, but that, the taking down the oaks. So to the greatest extent, keeping what you're doing here that's good and doing less harm, I guess, where the oaks are concerned, would be ideal.
I appreciate that.
Any other members of the bar have any comments or further questions? John Ledwith, we gave notice to all the neighbors. I'm one of them. I know I got one. Correct?
Yes, the neighbors have been notified and the village board members have been notified, given the proximity of the reservoir to the project.
John and Sheila, sorry, my mic was
Sure,
off.
go ahead.
This is Christopher Boshears, bar member. I just wanted to make a couple comments. First off, to thank William and Melanie. I think it's a very well thought out plan. I like the fact that we're getting rid of the mining road coming down to the edge of the lake. But you're stewards of the property that has been denuded over the years. And I think the planting schedule is amazing. What I'm curious about, William, is if you have a photograph from the other side of the lake that gives us a visual of how this fits in to as far as from the waters.
That I wish I did. I do not.
Is
I could.
My concern is not only well, I completely back up the feelings about removal of the oaks, but creating a hole or a gap in the landscape, in a natural landscape. I think the terrace and stone steps and pathways and all are beautifully thought out and executed. But I'm both ecologically concerned about losing the oaks and aesthetically from natural landscape viewpoint from the other side, from boaters and residents on the other side.
I'm very sensitive to that. I understand not necessarily wanting to open up an aperture, which is completely inconsistent with the balance of the experience along that shore. I would like to, I'd like to be in a boat right now so I could measure the average opening for the homes and then kind of be within a margin of error or a measure of consistency with those. But unfortunately, I don't have that ability from my desk today. But it's a very good point. I'm wondering if the best way to view this application is to see it in two parts. Maybe the first part is putting in the hardscape, putting in the pathway, winding it down, remediating that gravel trail, trying to establish a ground plane. Then once that's in place, carefully looking back at the shore's edge, taking into consideration the adjacent neighbors, and then come up with a mitigation plan to not necessarily just remove the fragmented linear forest that we have, which Christopher Gao, you've done an amazing job of expressing the importance of that. I wish you were on my board in Old Tapan. but also to mitigate and improve upon that within the site, because as we all know, this site has been denuded, and our client is really trying to do it their best to make it more hospitable to birds and critters and enhance the riparian buffer, because right now it's in shambles with a quarry road down to the boat. It's not even experientially nice. So, sometimes in my experience sitting on the planning board in my own town, I know that applications can't get, approved all at once, and maybe a measured approach is best. I don't, I would leave that up to the board to decide. But I do see inherent flaws in this linear tree assemblage that we have, and I'd love to fix that somehow. I know it's valuable, but I think if we could just push them out of the way a little bit and cluster them better, that would be better. But that's not what we have at the moment. So maybe a site visit with some board members might help.
I mean, also, if I could just, if you were to carve out, say, 2 windows with
Mhm.
just in the picture we're looking at, 3 stands,
Yeah,
and then enhanced with everything else that you're talking about, perhaps supplemented by another 25 or 35 oaks elsewhere on the property, saplings,
yeah,
not,
sure.
and they're healthier the younger you plant them.
Well, that's an actual interesting point, because I've found research that shows that saplings that are about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter actually ultimately outpace larger 2 to 3 inch trees that you'd be planting, and they're structurally more strong when they are mature. So
I mean,
be interesting.
and honestly, a lot of other kinds of mitigation are really cost effective and low, fine bore, but easy. For instance, just leaving the leaf litter,
Yeah,
this entire thing would do so much for the wildlife, for the insects, for the base populations, for the birds, for the purification of the water and the stabilization of the soil. Just, making a commitment not to use leaf blowers.
absolutely.
And where you have to, mulching as opposed to blowing, where there is any, just doing that would do so much good for the lake. So, on balance, knowing that residents have a certain quota of trees they can take down anyway, I guess I share all of the concerns that Christopher masterfully put forward about the value of each of these oaks. But I also sort of see so much good in the application. And I think if doing it all at once is a big part of the applicant's incentive to do this kind of good stewardship, then I would just wonder if there aren't middle ground ways of approaching that view shed, maybe a little bit more delicately than was first proposed, but without insisting on the entire row remaining as it is.
I think personally, I think that's a very detailed approach to the design, which is I like, because, and I don't want this to just be about aesthetics, because aesthetics and natural value of landscapes shouldn't be measured against each other. But the trees, as seen in the picture, are almost perfectly even and yet not. And they, as Christopher mentioned, they somewhat look like teeth, and you'd be removing one here or there. And I understand the problems inherently in doing that, but if once we lay out that patio, if you look out and you remove some very strategically, but leave many others strategically, maybe there is a compromise. Again, I'd have to defer to the owner for that, but it does make sense to
You'll have
mitigate it
some
with more
time
trees.
to mull over this first discussion. And I think you'll have some more suggestions too as we go into the public comment.
Okay.
So perhaps, unless anyone has anything else, we should move in that direction. And see who wants to be speakers. John, can you see who has their hand raised to speak?
Yes, I do have 2 people that have raised their hands now, 3. So
Why don't we proceed with that? Chu Yen Hempel, maybe, or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
at the top of my list. Chu Yen, you're on mute, I think.
I'm asking her to unmute at this time.
Let's see.
There we go.
You're good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Mr. Boyce, I'm Chuyen Hempel.
Hi.
I'm a resident of, my address is 14 Butternut Road, Tuxedo Park. I've lived in the park for 31 years. And I'm a former chair of the Board of Architectural Review, a former chair of the Tree Advisory Board and a current member. And my third book on Tuxedo Park is about its nature and landscape. So I guess this explains my interest in this particular application. I don't think I can say anything more than what Christopher has so eloquently put in terms of the importance of native vegetation, particularly the wonderful oaks, and the importance of the riparian buffer zone in protecting the quality of our drinking water in the reservoir. We're not, as a very tangible proof of our concern, is that Mr. Boyce, you may know that Tuxedo Lake has a milfoil problem, about which we're spending tens and thousands of dollars, let alone attention time, to try to tackle. And this milfoil problem is particularly bad at the south end of the lake. Way back when I first moved into Tuxedo Park, this property and the adjacent property to the left were both as wooded as the lakeside of Chastellux, where you on your map mark as the forest. Unfortunately, over many, many years and many generations of owners, trees and shrubs and undergrowth and ground covers have been removed. And I was actually very sad to see the photographs, to see its present condition. So to me, the further removal of oak trees, despite very well thought out additional new planting, it breaks my heart to see that. And I'm just wondering, I don't know whether those trees can be trimmed instead of being cut down altogether. I also have a thought. I like the fact that you're replanting the native trees and shrubbery and stuff like that. The site is very steep, so I hope the owners will actually consider putting in the watering system, because I cannot imagine any of the landscapers or the owners wanting to carry buckets of water going down there to water the new dogwood or the new shrubbery and so on. So that's something that maybe should be included in the plan. I don't know. And I just also want to point out, having sort of studied riparian buffers, I think you mentioned cardinal flowers. Many of the riparian grasses are actually very beautiful. And I think if you were to plant a border of 10 to 15 feet along the shoreline, in addition to the other plantings that you're thinking of, I think everybody would be very, very pleased with the aesthetic result. I just want to add I have one question, and you don't need to answer me, is that I see that the platform will have a mortared base. Would that not make the platform impermeable and therefore creating much greater surface water runoff into the lake? After all, the platform is 900 square feet, and that's the size of a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. or two-bedroom apartment in New York City. So it's
I
a
think-
sizable space. And I will finish here by saying that of the year, having lived in Tuxedo Park for such a long time, I'm a firm believer that we're not just owners of the properties. We are stewards of our properties, and every one of us has the responsibility to leave I'm sure we will at some point leave and go on somewhere else, but we need to leave the property in better shape in terms of its architecture, in terms of its infrastructure, and now most urgently, in terms of its environmental impact. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Julian. I think our next speaker is Mr. Hayes.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Chairman Tralin. My name is James Hayes. I'm a resident of Tuxedo Park, and my wife and I have lived here for more than 30 years. I'm an emeritus professor of Earth and Planetary Sciences at Columbia University. I served on the Town of Tuxedo Planning Board. I served on the Village of Tuxedo Park as a trustee and deputy mayor, and I'm currently the chair of the Tuxedo Park Lakes Committee. Now, other members of that committee are here and probably will also want to speak. I am concerned about the plan. I'm concerned about the state of the property as it is now, which is not due to the present owners, but prior owners, that it has been denuded to the extent it has. The underlying rocks in this area are very hard. They're granite gneiss. It's taken 15,000 years to produce the very thin soils that exist. And those soils, as Chris has pointed out, are held in place by vegetation, primarily by trees, but also by shrubs and other things. And we're stable. But there's no question in my mind at this point that this slope is no longer stable. It is eroding. So the rock outcrops will expand, and ultimately, if something isn't done about it, it will be mostly bare rock. That's the way it was when the glaciers left. And if these thin soils are washed away, which they can be, it will return to that state. This is a very steep slope, and there's been discussion of vegetative borders, and vegetative borders are obviously very important in terms of absorbing nutrients, as others have pointed out, but they're particularly important with such steep slopes, when water rushes down this slope unimpeded by vegetation and arrives at the lake edge and goes right into the lake. So a vegetative border, which is very robust, 15, 20, 25 feet, but dense and can be beautiful. And this has been pointed out, and I'm sure the landscape architect is well aware of how beautiful vegetative borders can be. They can be a great addition to the beauty of a property, and they are so necessary on a property such as this. I would strongly recommend, as others have who spoke before me, that a vegetative border be put in along the entire length of the property's lakefront. And I think that it's been mentioned that trees and shrubs are important in terms of holding the soils, but having, and as Rob McQuilkin pointed out, even leaf litter can help impede the deleterious effect of raindrops falling on bare soil. But if the leaves are blown away and the soil is exposed, it will erode. And it is definitely, I'm sure, is eroding. And there's no way that in a strong thunderstorm that soil is not being eroded. And that is bad for the lake. As Chuyin pointed out, she mentioned the milfoil, but we also have algal blooms, which are directly related to excessive nutrients, which are coming from basically from developed properties. The property across the street, the fully across the lake, the fully wooded properties are not contributing to this, but the properties that are bare and without vegetation will. So as I guess Chris pointed out, the more we disturb the landscape, the more nutrients will flow into the lake. So the goal should be to revegetate this property and to put a very robust vegetative border along its edge. I'm also concerned about the patio. We don't have many rules in this park. We're not in any way strongly environmental in our uptake. We only have a few rules, but one of the rules is that you don't put structures, you don't build structures within 100 feet of the lake. And I think that the reason for this is because it's an impervious surface. It washes and it washes into the lake, and it disturbs the land adjacent to the lake. And this is not unusual to have such rules. I mean, in the Adirondacks, they're far more rigorous than this. There's nothing radical about our rules. Our rules are very mild, but I think that placement of that within the 100-feet border is a mistake. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Who else do we have with a hand up, John? Oh, the mayor. Mayor.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm speaking as a resident, not as the mayor.
Let's see.
We're very lucky that we can even have this conversation. This family has done nothing but show willingness to improve the property. And the requests that are being made, although I highly respect the people that are making them and that I've heard so far, could only be done by a family that is in a certain position, can make improvements, and I do not want to discourage them. With the proper mitigation, I think that this is a beautiful plan, and I think that it should proceed forward. I don't have an issue with the riparian border. I think that would be a plus, but you have to look at this holistically, this application. And being someone that's always on the lake, I've seen what they've done with this property and how they've improved it from the last owner. And specifically, when you're on the lake and you're looking at the hill, the steep hill that goes down below the path, when it starts, the first third of the path, grasses, trees, plantings, stop the erosion. They've taken and built stone walls for the cut and fill. All of that has helped mediate the problem. It's one of the, in terms of what they inherited, it's a very, very difficult property to work with. And they weren't left with much. It's not unsimilar to what's happening with the property next door to the north of them. That area is also a runoff area. What they've done so far has done nothing but improve that situation. And you know, it's easy to make requests and ask them to spend more money, but we need to mitigate this, and everyone needs to compromise. And I think that in that spirit, they would be willing to do certain things over time. You can't expect them to do everything initially. Like I said, they've got an excellent track record of what they've been doing so far, and they should be complimented on that. I missed the part about the trees. I apologize. So I really don't, I think you're talking about, maybe they're taking oaks down. I'm not sure. And there were some concerns about that. Again, I would recommend that we mitigate this and do whatever we can to help this application pass. Thank you.
I don't know, Mayor, that any of us are suggesting that this isn't a robust plan being proposed, but I think our resident experts are proposing things that may enhance the beauty of the property for the applicants. Chuyen has lists of beautiful riparian border plants, and the plans and the knowledgeable landscape architect was suggesting things, and the oaks, yes, perhaps there is some compromise there. So hopefully, all in all, when we get to the end and work together, everyone will be happy. Those on boats looking at the property from the lake, as well as the residents, and as well as the lake. Who else do we have that wants to speak?
Jim Hayes' hand is still up. I don't know if he has another comment or not.
No, I
Elizabeth
have
Cotton-
no comments.
No comments?
No.
Elizabeth Cottonwar has her hand up. I'll unmute her. Elizabeth?
Yes, Elizabeth Cottonwar. I'm a resident, Weewa Road, as well as owning lake property on the reservoir. I guess I just want to add to the voices of Jim Yee and Jim Hayes, Christopher. I agree wholeheartedly with what they're suggesting. The idea, seeing the photos, I'm very familiar with the property from spending a lot of time on the lake. The photos of the oaks, while not the most attractive display, I don't understand the idea that you can't see the lake. I mean, there's plenty of space between the oaks where you get perfect view of the water. So that's just something I was curious about. And I was also in agreement and had questions about whether or not the patio was impervious or not. And that was a big issue as well, where the water would be running off the stone and cause the same kind of problems we're trying to mitigate. Riparian buffers are important. I'd love to see them all around the lake. I highly encourage that. They can be so beautiful and add such a dimension, bringing wildlife to the area, the birds, the butterflies. I have property, have this kind of planting, these meadows and so forth, and it's a real joy for maybe 6 months out of the year. So I guess that's all I have to add. I think it's great that they're working to improve the property, and I fully support that. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You have anyone else, John?
No, there's no one else with their hand raised at this time.
Okay. Do the applicants have any other comments they want to make? The plan next would be for you to go before the BZA and then and propose back to us whatever you want to. Propose.
Okay. I'd like to address a few of the comments that were made, clarify a few points. The patio that we're proposing it directly on top of areas that are already disturbed. So we're not, compacting or impacting or disturbing areas that are virgin by any means. Additionally, it'll be composed of, the goal is to have the base of that patio be composed of the gravel, which is permeable, and currently the path. So, and ultimately it'll be a dry set patio. So it'll actually store water rather than create it. The voids between, the half-inch voids between the bluestone as dry laid will take in the water, and then it'll act as a reservoir. So we're dealing with water volume there, which I think is great. So it's actually good. While it's not plants, it'll absorb water. And actually, having this discussion made me think of a few things. The long gravel path that goes down from the upper driveway area, that it creates some runoff, as you could see with that rill. If I can now channel that runoff and use the base of that big patio as a sump, or deal with some of the water volume created by that runoff, that path, then we're actually ahead of the game. And I think that would be a very innovative way to handle that. We're taking erosive material, creating a large volume for water volume improvement, less directly into the reservoir. Additionally, If you look at the lawn, the way the lawn is configured, it kind of flows down towards the reservoir, as you know, and it pitches down steeply to the reservoir, only separated by a mossy kind of knoll. By adding 124 shrubs and 146 ferns, etc., and 500 carex pennsylvanica, we're intending to slow that down. And I could offer, and if the applicant agreed, we could maintain the leaf litter in that area below those shrubs. It would reduce maintenance costs. But in between the lawn and that riparian buffer, if we simply create a lower depression area and a hump before it then goes down again, we could in fact create a rain garden. If we have to regrade it anyway to take out that pathway, that rain garden could act as a water quality enhancement between the lawn, which is fertilized regularly, I'm sure. It'll absorb that, let that sink into the ground, and then only in an extreme storm event would the water flow over that and then down the moss plus all those plants. So minor tweaks to this plan, as much as we already tried to create a new landscape that would benefit the environment. I think a couple minor improvements could really even make it that much better. But thank you all for all your comments. I appreciate what you've contributed. I wish we had you all in our town. Very thoughtful. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your creative on the spot thinking, and I imagine there'll be more you come up with at 3 in the morning.
I do. You can see the rest of my office is empty, but yeah.
But in any event, we'll look forward to seeing you again, and we appreciate you listening to our ideas, and we hope it'll be a win-win for everyone ultimately.
Chairwoman Trellin, Sue Haywood has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. When I was, when my video wasn't on, I couldn't find the way to put my hand up. I back everything that Rob, Chris, and Jim said. I'm on the Lakes Committee. I live 167 East Lake Road, so I am fairly adjacent to this property. Can't we just leave those trees? Can't they look at the lake through those trees? Do we really have to? I was horrified by what Chris Gow said about 30% of the birds are not here anymore because of the fact that we are denuding the landscape. The more we can leave things natural and enhance the landscape. I love the idea of all the plantings you're going to do, because last year when we saw this from the lake, what the previous owners had done, we were just horrified with it was just down to rock. It was just awful. So please, we want the place to be as natural as possible. I really feel very emotional about this, and please don't dismiss what Rob and Chris and Jim have said, because they're very knowledgeable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Haywood.
Thank you.
Okay. John, are we good? We have everyone spoken?
Christopher Gow just raised his hand.
I just wanted one last thing. So just to summarize, the ultimate aim is that we want to raise our glasses of pure, clean Tuxedo Lake water to the McLennans at the end of this project to say, bravo, thank you, thank you, thank you for being such good stewards and being great neighbors in the park and working to find the right compromise so that it's a win-win situation for themselves, for the village, and for Mother Nature. And we look forward to that, and we'd be so grateful and appreciative. And you would set a precedent and be the poster children of Tuxedo Park for what is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you for coming before us this evening. I think that ends this discussion of the application. And I think we have some minutes to approve, don't we, Desiree?
Yes, we do. November 18th. Doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it was.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2021 meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Yes, indeed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, and thank you, everyone. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Good
Sheila.
evening, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.